Okay, let's dive right in. We're going to break down one of the boldest, most high-stakes geopolitical moves we've seen in a long time, America's push to buy Greenland, and the incredible threat backing it up. So in early 2026, the world just kind of stopped and stared. The US administration dropped an economic bombshell. But get this, it wasn't aimed at a rival, it was aimed at 8 of its own NATO allies. The message was simple and brutal. Sell us Greenland or get ready for crippling tariffs. Now, on the surface, this whole thing seems to come out of nowhere, right? Almost like a spur-of-the-moment idea. But when you start to peel back the layers, you find this incredibly complex mix of strategic planning, a bit of history, and, a whole lot of economic desperation. And it really all starts with this number, America's national debt. It is absolutely staggering. And this isn't just some figure on a spreadsheet. It is the hidden engine driving this entire massive gamble. So to really get why this is all happening, you first have to understand what Greenland actually represents today. It's this perfect storm of old-school ambition and very, very urgent 21st century needs. The way the administration is selling this is by framing it as the next big chapter in American history. They're putting it right up there with the Louisiana Purchase and buying Alaska. They see it as this huge legacy-defining deal. But the world today, it's a completely different ballgame. And it's not just about history. Look at this. Greenland is basically a 21st century treasure chest. It has the biggest untapped stash of rare earth minerals in the world, the stuff you need for literally everything, from your phone to a fighter jet. Getting that would instantly break China's 85% chokehold on the market. And oh, by the way, there's also a ton of oil and control over new Arctic shipping lanes that'll be 40% shorter than going through the Suez Canal. Militarily, the location is it's perfect. Greenland is the anchor of what's called the GIUK Gap. That's the crucial bit of ocean between Greenland, Iceland, and the UK. For decades, NATO has used this exact spot as a choke point to keep an eye on naval threats, especially Russia's northern fleet coming down from the Arctic. And that brings us to the ultimate defensive prize, a concept called the Golden Dome strategy. The idea is to build a missile shield right over the Arctic. If you put the most advanced radar and interceptors in Greenland, you could potentially knock out any ballistic missile coming from Russia or China over the North Pole. That would be an unbelievable advantage for defending the continent. So the strategic case is rock solid. You've got defense, resources, trade routes. It all makes sense. But that still doesn't explain the rush. Why now? To get that, we have to stop looking at the map for a second and start looking at America's very shaky balance sheet. The U.S. economy is basically caught in this trap that economists call an impossible trinity. It's trying to juggle 3 things that all work against each other. You want to control the massive debt, but you also need to keep the economy growing, and you have to stop inflation from taking off again. It's like every time you pull one lever, the other 2 get worse. So the administration's solution is this incredibly high-risk strategy they're calling dual loosening. Honestly, the best way to think about it is just flooring the gas pedal with both feet. It means huge government spending and tax cuts on one side, while at the very same time pushing the Fed to slash interest rates and print more money. It is a massive, massive economic gamble. And in the middle of all this economic chaos, Greenland suddenly looks like the answer. It becomes more than just a piece of land. All those untapped resources, they act like a physical asset, like gold in a vault, to back up the US dollar and give it credibility during this wild monetary experiment. Plus, it gives them a great story to tell to justify all the spending. It's not debt, it's a strategic investment in our future. But, and this is a huge but, this is where we have to get critical. Because this laser focus on getting Greenland, driven by all this pressure, it's exposing some major, and potentially disastrous, blind spots in U.S. strategy. The first giant blind spot is what you could call the social contract clash. See, Greenland runs on a Nordic social model. We're talking universal free healthcare, free education, big social safety nets. Trying to force the American market-based system on them would cause chaos. But keeping their system, well, that would create a permanent financial black hole for U.S. taxpayers, costing tens of billions every single year, way more than what they'd even pay for the island itself. These kinds of mistakes are rooted in a few really dangerous ways of thinking. First, you've got the real estate mindset, treating a nation with its own culture and people like it's just a skyscraper you can buy. Then, there's this techno-optimism bias, this blind faith that our engineers can easily solve the insane challenges of building in a melting, unpredictable Arctic. And finally, there's this competitive tunnel vision, being so focused on beating China and Russia that you completely ignore the damage you're doing to your own friends and allies. And this quote just nails it. It perfectly sums up the core risk here. What's being sold as the deal of the century could very, very quickly turn into a giant strategic liability, a negative asset that just drains American money and leaves it totally isolated on the world stage. Okay, so you've got this immense pressure pushing the US to do this, and you've got these incredible risks pushing back. So where does this all land? What's the most likely way this whole drama plays out? Well, first off, a simple, clean purchase, you can pretty much forget about it. Analysts put the chance of that actually happening at less than 15%. The political opposition from the people in Greenland, from Denmark, and from other European allies is just way too strong to overcome. So that brings us to the most probable scenario with about a 70% chance of happening, a messy, ugly, forced compromise. This isn't about making Greenland the 51st state. The most likely endgame is something called de facto control. Basically, the US uses its power to get exclusive rights to all the military and resource assets it wants, while letting Denmark pretend it still has sovereignty. America would get the prize, but the cost would be absolutely enormous. It would shatter the trust with its closest allies. And in the end, it really all comes down to this one single question. It's a question that cuts right to the heart of this entire gambit. And it forces us to calculate not just the value of an island, but the value of alliances, of international law, and maybe the very foundation of America's place in the world.